This is the Head Rush Podcast with Paul Fraze and Corey Berry.
Welcome to the Head Rush Podcast. I'm Paul Fraze, and I played 11 years in the NFL. And Corey Berry, to my right, maybe your left, he rode professional rodeo for 9 years. And at the Head Rush Podcast, we talk about everything related to brain trauma and brain health and wellness. We talk about traumatic brain injury, TBI. We talk about CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, TES, traumatic encephalopathy syndrome, which is actually the closest you can be diagnosed to CTE while you're still alive. We talk about repeated head impacts, which are associated and known to cause CTE. We talk about repeated blast exposure from our military. We cover how traumatic brain injuries can and will cause mental health issues such as depression, addiction, lack of executive function, memory loss, even suicide ideation, as well as degenerative neurological issues. These symptoms can be found on the Mayo Clinic and Boston University's websites under CTE, symptoms of CTE. Our mantra is how to cope and find hope. We focus our energy on finding therapies and sharing hope through education and raising awareness.
Before I announce our next guest, 2 weeks ago you saw my personal doctor, Victor Kaetzer, on, and we talked about TES, we talked about concussions, we talked about CTE and some of my symptoms, and getting the TES as a medical diagnosis, not just a clinical. And I'm not going to really harp on that and push that, but I invited him back today to be part of this episode for the simple fact that our guest today did a great documentary and really opened the eyes, I believe, to the world, not only to Tyler Sash, but also to Concussed, CTE. And he's the writer, producer, director. Kano co-authored an autobiography of MMA fighter Dan Henderson titled Hindu American Athlete. David Kano is the director, executive producer of the new documentary Concussed, The American Dream, a powerful documentary that investigates the hidden dangers of head trauma in tackle football, spotlighting the devastating impact of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. The film traces the rise and fall of a Super Bowl champion, Tyler Sash. Amazingly enough, before I bring him on, we have a great connection here at Head Rush Podcast with this story. Tyler Sash's head coach was Tom Coughlin in
the New York Giants.
At the New York Giants, but he was also your head coach.
Yes.
With the New York Jets?
Yeah. No. It was Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jacksonville Jaguars?
Yeah. He was the head coach for the Jaguars in '95. I got drafted by Tom and his team, and I played a couple years with underneath Tom Coughlin. And I actually just had breakfast with him last week. And we did talk about Tyler Sash because in Concussed, The American Dream, one of the parts is Tom Coughlin at a media event talking about the death of his player Tyler Sash. And one thing that is amazing about Tom Coughlin, he had a kid at Boston College, a defensive back, that died of cancer. And I saw the human side of Tom Coughlin. He was a bear on the field, but off the field, man, he had a heart to help. You could tell he had a heart for Tyler Sash and what he expressed to his family after his demise.
And Tyler Sash, whose journey is from a small town in Iowa to NFL glory and was tragically cut short. In this movie, they're paired a parallel narrative. NFL Hall of Famer Brett Favre, which again, I made sure that he brought his helmet, Green Bay Packers, that you played with Brett in 1997, correct?
Yes, yeah, I did. I had actually the day I got traded to Green Bay, the day before the final cut, and I walk into the locker room, and the first thing I see a witness is Brett Favre has got his new book, and it was just released, and he was handing a copy to everybody in the locker room, and I was just the new kid on the block, although it was my 9th year in the league, 10th year in the league. He treated me like a teammate, and he hadn't even met me. I don't know if he remembers me at this point, but yeah, he was a great teammate.
Did you play against him at all
No.
in the 10 years prior? Because you were AFC.
Yeah. I did not play against Brett. I don't know.
It would have been great if you would have sacked him.
Yeah, I sacked Dan Marino.
Yes, you did. You also missed Dan Marino in the 2-minute drill.
The fake spike play. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Introduce our guest. The parallel narrative with
NFL
Brett Favre.
Hall of Famer Brett Favre. We
that's
just
right.
talked about that. Reflects on a toll that 2 decades of professional football have taken on brain and body. Although their stories reveal the sobering reality behind America's most beloved sport, I disagree with that.
Oh,
I do. Rodeo is the most beloved sport. And cost athletes often pay in silence. That I agree with, and I'm sure my doctor would agree that we do that. So I want to introduce director David Kano of
Concussed,
the
the
American
American Dream. That was his most recent project. Well, maybe you probably have a 10 projects going on.
Well, you got a new one going on. Is Brett part of that new one?
We do. We have. It depends what project you're talking about, but we do have a trilogy of boxing is coming up next called Combat the American Dream. Then we have Cage the American Dream, which is on MMA and CTE. So we've interviewed already from Floyd Mayweather Sr., Roy Jones Jr., Ray Boo Mancini, Dan Henderson. We've interviewed the late Pernell Whitaker, also from MMA, Don Fry, for those old school UFC guys with a big mustache, and even some of the newer ones, Uriah Faber, Aljamain Sterling. So we've done our research and done extensive interviews with former and current pro athletes.
Have they found MMA or CTE and deceased MMA?
Yes, they have.
At Boston University, or
They
probably
did. Dr. McKee said they found the first case of a MMA fighter that fought in Bellator, and I believe he was about 27 years old. I can't. His name's not coming off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, Dr. McKee said you can't come out of a combat sport unscathed.
No. Yeah, it is amazing. You know, I've had the honor and privilege to meet her and hear her talk, and I heard her talk shortly after she really started focusing on the kids, and we'll talk about, we'll get deep into the weeds about our thoughts of 14 no helmets,
Contact sports.
flag football until you're 14 years old, at least. But there's so much that education that we are lacking, that we need to have as a society to really make these parents aware of the problems with repeated head impacts.
And once again, Dr. Kacher has met Ann McKee. You have met Ann McKee.
You have, right?
Yeah.
She cut her brain in front of me. Did she cut her brain in
Did
front of me?
she really?
I didn't get that special experience.
And yet, I haven't had a chance to meet her yet.
When was she at Boston University?
Boston University, yes.
And she cut it.
It's very surreal. I mean, I don't make light of it because I was a human being, and when you see that brain in front of you, and at first you do know the age, the individual played college football, and then she's there, and she actually diagnosed it and found CTE in the brain. It's kind of for me being Christian, and I've believe that there's some life after death, but like here's a human being there, and it's being sliced all the way to the middle, and this is what's left of their body.
I actually had that experience at the Mayo Clinic here for the head neurologist, pathologist, neurologist, however they say it, and it was surreal. Yeah, human brain, thin slices, and looking for. I think that one had Alzheimer's.
Have you got to cut one open and look at it yet?
Not in regards to CTE, but throughout medical school, that was part of the education, and yeah, it's a very surreal experience if you're not used to it.
Man.
So David, you did. First of all, congratulations in telling the story of Tyler Sash, and you did an incredible job.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we're going to get into the acting, the writing, the producing. You do everything. You even did modeling, right? When
Once upon a time I was handsome, and but that was years ago. But no, my career started in front of the camera originally. So I've done TV shows, commercials, magazines. But then, as I've always had my craft into writing. I loved writing, and I wanted to cultivate more of that. And then I thought, well, writing led to producing and directing, because now I get to tell my own stories. I don't have to act for someone else. I can do whatever I want to do, because let's face it, Hollywood, the stories feel repetitive. They feel the same. And I want to tell new stories, and a story that maybe someone wouldn't tell. For example, Tyler Sash. It seemed like his story was getting buried. His mom, Barney Sash, I call her Mrs. Sash, actually did an interview with Fox. I believe it was a couple of hours long for the Super Bowl, and they took like maybe a 10-second snippet from it. And so at first, actually, Mrs. Sash didn't even want me to go out there. She ignored my calls, and she finally called me. We're coming across Middle America, because they're based out of Iowa, Oskaloosa, Iowa. And she says, okay, you can come over. And this is 3-4 years removed from Tyler passing away. And so it was really hard and difficult. And as I was there, it hit me more and more the more time we would go back to Iowa, that this isn't just about football. It's not just about CTE. This is about a relationship with a mom losing her son. And the effects that doing this and not being educated on head trauma, what it led to. Because one of the things, and you've watched the film, his dad wouldn't even do an interview. He felt responsible. I didn't even meet his dad. Every time we would pull up, he would go in the garage, wait till we went inside. I don't know. That's just the truth. They didn't say not to say it. And he would just leave. He'd go around the block every time we came into town. Because when Tyler was young and he would get rocked, he would come off the field and his dad would tell him, hey, we don't do that. You go in there and you play, because that's that toughness. And his sister says that same toughness and grit is the same thing that took him away.
I can't even imagine, going through that. Did his father coach him? Was he a coach as well? Yeah.
Yes, his father coached him through the Pee Wee leagues, and I believe into middle school. At high school, he had a different coach, but at least at the young elementary school age, his dad was his head coach. And his dad played football, I believe, at William and Mary there in Oskaloosa. His brothers played basketball. But here's the thing: even in the documentary, the Kirk Ferentz, head coach of the University of Iowa football, thought Tyler was going to play basketball. He was that good of an athlete. He was being recruited both ways. And my thought, sometimes I think in my head, I overthink, is, what if he would have chose basketball? Would this story still be the same story?
Yeah. So I don't, you can't answer that question. No. We know beyond is scientific fact, repeated head injuries or impacts will cause damage and will it affect your mental health as well?
And we also don't know, like you were saying, is there a point of no return where, all those years of hits in Pee Wee and high school, is that already too late?
Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Millennium Health Centers, Dr. Mark Gordon at tbihealthnow.org. He signed on with us. You've seen him in our episode 2 with Dr. Mizell DeMeo and Dr. Gordon.
Dr. Gordon's been featured on a movie, Quiet Explosions, a documentary about TBI. Featured Andrew Marr, a Green Beret blast explosive specialist, and they talk about TBI, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and gosh, I've watched that movie about 4 times, and I know Dr. Gordon has also been on Joe Rogan 6 times, so he has something good and powerful to say about TBI, traumatic brain injury. So go to tbihelpnow.org.
Correct.
And make sure you get in touch with their team. Dr. Gordon also works with the military. Do you want to?
Yeah, he works with the United States military. He's done the Pentagon. He's working real close with them. If you're a veteran and you need help, go to tbihelpnow.org. Dr. Mark Gordon quit his private practice just to work with the military.
Work with veterans suffering with PTSD.
Right, PTSD, TBIs, and repeated blast impacts.
Exactly.
And if you are a veteran, there's nothing closer to my heart than the people that serve our country and protect our way of right and our way to be able to do this podcast for you. So go to tbihelpnow.org and get the help you need. Mark Gordon, we work with him on the Brainwell program through Mizell DeMeo. If you go to tbihelpnow.org, there's a list. There may be a provider in your area in Canada. He's all over. So go to tbihelpnow.org and check it out.
And here's the thing too, and Brett said this, it doesn't matter if it's one big hit or 1,000. Everyone's different. This is some of my research as well. Everyone's brain is different. Everyone's DNA is different. I mean, for example, me, I played football in high school. I played community college football at a pretty high level. But I've had my first big concussion was in 8th grade. I was taken to the Children's Hospital in San Diego. We were playing tackle football on grass, which is basically cement. And I was playing with kids in high school as a 7th grader. Head got slammed by one of the best athletes. I didn't know where I was at when I went home. They took me, they did an MRI. They're like, yeah, something's wrong with him. But back then it was just like, don't go to sleep. You know, you just stay in dark places, but he'll be good for school the next day. And so then when I played quarterback, I get sacked, I would see stars. I would literally see, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. A star. But you just stayed in the game because I don't want my backup to come in. I don't want anyone to take my job. But then I noticed when I hit like 25, I'm like, something's going on in there. It's not the same as it was before. And it got worse. And when I talked to Dr. Ann McKee, I mean, every single symptom, the highs and lows, the mood swings, the bright lights like this, it hurts my head. Or loud noises, things they just, I get startled and I'll stare and people are like, are you okay? So, you know, one of the things she said is like, it's neurodegenerative, and you could probably talk to this where it's not going to get better, but there are ways to mitigate it of doing puzzles, working out, making sure that you're doing something at all times. Because if I'm not actively doing something, then this goes to not good places. So would you say that that's correct information that she said about that?
Yeah, so we don't want necessarily people to feel like there's a lost cause. There's a lot of symptoms that can be treatable, even something as simple as the light sensitivity. So there's it seems to be that a certain band of green light seems to be the most soothing for the eyes. So we try to there's special lenses that can maybe help block out some of those reds and blues, and a little thing like that can make a big difference.
That's what's in my lenses to help me. And like you witnessed yesterday, people walking behind me, I'm ready to fight.
We were at a restaurant for his daughter actually got married yesterday, and we were at the restaurant after the wedding, And it was that the Fogo. It was one of the Brazilian style restaurants that they bring all the meat, the chicken, the steak, the bacon wrap, and do you want some? And they were walking behind Corey, and that was a triggering. That was I was you start seeing, I know my executive function is shot. I can barely do one thing at a time now, right? but yeah, there's so many symptoms and possibilities and things that are involved with this. But
and I don't know if you would agree with this or not, because people ask me what's the worst sport, right? And just based upon my research and then training, I've trained jiu-jitsu, boxing, I played football. I'm going to say it's funny because I interview the NFL players. They say boxing or MMA fighters have it worse. I talk to boxers. They say football players have it worse, or MMA fighters. They say the other two. They all blame another one. But I believe this is just I don't know if this is true or not, but boxing to me would be the worst. And I know they're still studying the punch struckness, the slurredness versus football players, which really don't get that. And the reason I say this is because in boxing, you can get knocked down, wait up to 10 seconds, get back up, and still get punched in the head, get knocked down. Wait, so your brain is swelling up, and it keeps on taking this damage. Where in MMA fights, you can finish the person right away. And in football, the intent isn't to knock out, although that is a byproduct. But what would you say? Because I think boxing has it the worst.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable to think, because you have that just direct blow to the head and then the 10-second count where you're probably already pretty concussed and now have to force to get back up. And with football, you have some protection, but it's also kind of every play is going to be some sort of contact. And but yeah, I think it's hard to ignore boxing. Boxing, you have that direct impact and just the repetitiveness of it.
Well, they found CTE in boxing in what, 1920?
Yeah, that's kind of when those first papers started to come out. That that punch drunk syndrome is kind of how they labeled it, and that was based off of boxers' testimonies.
And I'm not talking about getting knocked out punch. I mean, you look at it. I've been in bar fights. I've been in regular fights. You take a jab to the head, and next thing you take a hook to the head. It may not knock you out, but it's got to be doing something. So no matter what you're doing, you're taking a thump. So I think definitely boxing is probably the brunt of it. Didn't they up the ounces on the gloves?
Still, for the lower classes, they still use smaller gloves. But for the heavier it goes, the ounces are a little bit bigger. So, but MMA gloves are still 4 ounces. But here's something Muhammad Ali, and we're going to use Ali in Combat the American Dream, even though he wasn't around. We actually interviewed his son-in-law, who was a UFC fighter. And with Ali, his belief was the more you punch me in the head, I can make my head harder. Like with your fist, you can do that. It's bone. So that's why you see boxers with these big knuckles. But with the brain, the head skull, it's just, and again, you're the expert. It's like Jell-O that's protecting your brain. Is that what you would compare it to?
Yeah, that's kind of an analogy we use a lot. It's basically thinking of Jell-O inside of a container. And so, the skull is really hard, very protective, but the brain, it kind of sloshes around inside. And, you get that contra coup trauma from hitting the back and the front of the skull. And then as the brain gets damaged, it starts to liquefy a little bit and shrink. And then you have more space for that brain to move.
That doesn't sound good. Liquefy.
Well, you think about it, it's with Jell-O. You smash it up enough, it turns into a liquid.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. So with you releasing the Concussed the American Dream, and what got you influenced to take this project on? And what started it for you and Brett to bring this together and use it as such I'm very thankful Brett did it because here's one of the best quarterbacks ever in the NFL coming forward about it, and then he came forward in Congress right after, right after it was released. Didn't he go to Congress and come out about himself?
That was right. That was the Parkinson's and
Right.
the head trauma. That was about November. So the film came out in August of 2024. He did in November 2024. What led me to this is went back to get my master's degree, and I thought about what would be a good thesis. I wanted to do something I was passionate about, not something that was just frivolous. So I thought, well, I know I have something's wrong with me. I managed a couple of UFC fighters a couple of years before, Nate Diaz and Yancy Medeiros. I've worked with Nick Diaz and other UFC guys. And so I thought, is there something off with people that get head trauma? So my research, my thesis was on the media effect of basically CTE of combat and combat sports and masculine hegemony. It's a playoff cultural hegemony. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that theory by Antonio Gramsci, which I'll bore you guys with, but it's just a theory. Cultural hegemony is where there's the elites or intellectuals, which would be the government, corporations, and media, that they coagulate together and they say, hey, this is what's good. So, for example, a football player is a warrior. You're not supposed to get hurt. Get up. Like, just dust yourself off. And if you're bleeding or if you're concussed, hey, you're playing the next game. Why? We pay you all this money.
That's what Rome did and in conquering all of those the world.
So that's what hegemony, cultural hegemony would be. Masculine hegemony is of that hero, that gladiator that never gets hurt. And so as I explored the different mass communication theories, and then I did my research on CTE, I was making these connections of some of this stuff. As obviously, I went back to the 1920s with punch drunk, which you were correct. I don't know. I have all the guys listed in my thesis, but I thought, well, maybe I want to make a documentary on this. And I talked to my entertainment attorney. He's like, that would be a pretty good one to do it on. So he kind of encouraged that. And so I wrote my thesis. It's like almost 100 pages long. It's pretty boring to most people, but I love digging into the whys and how does this work and the forces at nature. And then I asked Favre if he could be a part of it, and he said yes. So I went down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I didn't think it was going to happen because I won't say the player's name, but that'll give it away. He won a Super Bowl with the Patriots. He's late 30s. Anyways, he was supposed to be in the film. We went to actually Dallas, Texas, and we were set to interview him. He walks in the room. He's like, I'm not doing the interview. I'm like, well, we were told that you would do the interview. He's like, I'm not doing it. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm like, why would we come all the way here from California where I was at the time? And it was like an OK Corral. I was looking at him. He was looking at me, but he's like 6'4", 260. I'm like, I'll probably get jacked up. But so my point being was Brett, I didn't know if it was going to happen. And when Brett showed up and he was there and he was willing to talk about it, I thought, wow, this is different because Brett's on another level than this guy. And yet he was willing to put his name on the line. And that's kind of how it started to slowly come together. But it's been a tough process just because people don't like to talk about it. I've talked to tons of regular people and they said they just want to be entertained. This is not entertaining right here.
No,
it's not a sexy topic.
No, it's not. And it's unfortunately people, and we were talking about culture, it's got to be a cultural change. People ignore it and they want to ignore it and they love their, professional sports that are concussive based professional football, hockey, the whole deal. And yeah, it's not a sexy subject and they're not going to get people, really dialoguing about it. So you get your master's, and it was mass communication.
Mass communication,
and your bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism. Did you think? And I'm assuming you're talking about a little pushback that you received from doing your work and making a film like this and exposing?
Right. There was pushback from all angles, from the getting interviews to distribution. It was really difficult because, again, there's so many relationships. You think about the mass communication or the theories. Some of the theories that I brought up was Marshall McLuhan, medium as a message, the propaganda model from manufactured consent, all of these things where there's, again, these elites at play. They get to control the narrative. And so that was a little bit difficult to get across the finish line because, again, they want to hear Bill Belichick and Jordan, his girlfriend. Can they be, can she come to the University of North Carolina practices? She's welcome. I mean, that's a hot button topic. Or Shadur Sanders dropping into the 5th round. What happened in those interviews? That's stuff people want to talk about. But the players that are suffering now, the players, and especially the fighters, they have no 401k.
No.
They don't get insurance at all.
We don't either as Cowboys.
Exactly. I mean, that's not something people want. They're like, who cares about that? We want to see the guy get bucked off
Get kicked in the head like I did, or land on their head and get rolled. No one goes to a NASCAR race to watch them go around in circles. They go for the wrecks.
Turn left. Is it left turn?
Yeah, 4 left turns.
Yeah, left turn. Yeah.
Or you go to a football game. You don't go to a football game. You're going to look for the wrecks, the hard hits, the big plays. You go to a rodeo, the bull riding, the bareback riding. You know, people don't go to a rodeo to watch, and I hate to say it, barrel racing. My wife's a barrel racer. Barrel racing and team roping. They go to watch the contact, the gladiators, the warriors of the sport. And when we get knocked out, they all go, oh. But they don't know the aftermath that we're dealing with afterwards. And I'm not against rodeo. I'm not against football. I'm not against any sport. I think we need it for us as men that are got that competition, that got that high energy, that got that drive that we got to conquer, that comes from our forefathers. But I think we need to bring awareness. And with your movie, you brought so much awareness out to the public that people watch us, they're going to see the reality of what Tyler Sash, all the other great football, McMahon.
So if he had a gun, he would have killed himself.
Yeah.
That was a powerful quote. And
there was times last year that I still get suicide thoughts now. But last year, I've said it many times, I didn't know if I was going to be alive tomorrow. That I did not want to deal with this pain. I did not want to deal with my struggles. But it's my faith in God. It's my perseverance. And I hate to say it, I will not take the coward way out. You know, and a lot of my friends get mad, and people around that say it's not coward, they just can't take it no more. Well, I can't think that way. Because if I think that way, that gives me an opportunity to do it, an excuse to do it. If I look at it as like I refuse to take a cowardly way out and leave my wife and my daughter alone, that's the worst thing you can do. I've had friends commit suicide and kill themselves. You know, I had one where they wanted me to do the eulogy, and I said no. You know, sorry, I ain't going to go memorialize a guy that kills himself.
Yeah. It is tough. The mental health issue of suicide is one that will, you know, unless you go through it, you won't understand. And that's your personal way of, you know, staving it off, staying away from it.
Right.
Yeah. Obviously some like your movie about Tyler Sash. I don't, did he didn't commit suicide, right?
No, it was an accidental overdose of different, I think he just mixed and matched the wrong medicine. Yeah. And the thing with I appreciate you saying we created awareness, But I wanted to make a movie that you have to make them care first. So that's why we told it through that story instead of just doctor, athlete, doctor, athlete. So that's why I tell people it's a mother losing her son. And to your statement about this space, there is an interview that Chester Bennington did. He was in Lincoln Park. And I pull it up every now and then. It's his last interview. He ended up committing suicide. And he says, like, this place right here, it's a bad place to be. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm with Lincoln Park or not. It doesn't matter who I'm with. He's like, if I'm not doing something actively. And so less than a month later, his wife found him hanging. And so you hear the music, and I wasn't a big Lincoln Park listener, but just hearing that interview and feeling that connection is, wow. I wonder how many other people are like that don't know what to do.
I got to see, and it's like what we talked about, is I got diagnosed in 1999 with cognitive nerve damage. And every year, couple of years, I was in getting more tests. Stuff was going wrong. Thoughts were MRIs, neurological. In 2016, I got my very first on a neurological exam, suspected CTE. And then I saw Kater and went down and saw Tanner. And now I got TES, probable CTE. But I'll tell you, it gave me something to work for. It gave me a definite, okay, this ain't going to cure. There's no cure for it. But it gives me something to fight for. And then you start talking to people, and then vestibular therapy, concussion therapy, all this other stuff, talking to a therapist. I've never been one. I'm a cowboy. We buck up, shut up, and get up. Quit whining about it. Do it. And me going and talking to a shrink is like my anti-religion. Go talk to someone about your problems. But there's things I can tell her I can't tell my wife, because if she knows what's really being said in my head, I'm going to scare the living crap out of her.
Mm-hmm. This episode of the Head Rush Podcast is brought to you by our personal doctor and team of doctors, Dr. Mizelle DeMayo, and she's with the Paradise Behavioral Health, and we are in the
Brainwell program, which is also part of the Millennium Health Center. Dr. Mark Gordon, you've seen him on Joe Rogan and even on our show, the Head Rush Podcast. And hormones. And Mizelle is awesome. We love her.
She's our doctor of psychiatry. She works the Mark Gordon program with the hormones, and she adds her twist of genetics, and it basically is melding two wonderful mediums together, and we're getting great help from Dr. Mizelle DeMayo.
So please check out her website at paradisebehavioral.com. Look up the Brainwell program. Get involved.
She's sponsoring us. They're sponsoring us for the next year, so we are excited to have them on board and shout the good news to everybody that is watching these broadcasts. So,
is she helping you, Paul?
Absolutely.
She's helping me. So go check her out. ParadiseBehavioralHealth.com. This American dream and what Tyler went through, I mean, maybe you didn't mean to bring the awareness that you did, but by the way you told the story from beginning to end with his basketball coach, his football coach, Tom Coughlin, and moved it into that CTE realm and leaving the milk on the counter. We just talked about it in the last podcast, how I put coffee in the refrigerator, take 6 tries to get a bottle of water out of the refrigerator sometimes, or can't speak clearly and get lost for thoughts. You know, you bring in that awareness and you bring in the name that you did. And I thank God for Brett Favre for it, because it's going to take someone his stature, like Tyler Sash's mom said. You know, if it's not a Tom Brady, a Brett Favre, a GOAT, I hate that word GOAT. I absolutely despise it. That caliber to the forefront, you're going to make headway. You're going to make people notice.
And Brett texts me right now, and he says he remembers your name, but not your face.
Yeah.
So I don't know if your face has
It's
changed.
gray hair.
He said, Brett Favre, remember the name, not the face.
There you go. And I was one of probably about 10,000 guys he played with, right? So how many years did he play?
20.
No, not yeah.
Same
so,
as you.
yeah. Well,
But
no.
you did a lot of
I did.
professional.
Yeah, I did 11 professional. He did 20 professional. So he had 53 guys on the roster every year. So that's that's 1,000,
Don't
whatever it is. I don't know. So, and
And I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to mitigate the awareness aspect. I just knew that I wanted to tell a story through it. Like for the combat, we tell the story through these two brothers who are professional boxers. One got signed to Rock Nation, which was Jay-Z's or Rock Sports, their boxing promotion, and he ends up getting put in a coma. He almost died, and so the movie will talk about how Rock Sports let him go. And I don't want to give too much away, but again, it's CTE, but we're doing it through a story. I want the audience to care, because the one thing is, if they don't care, they're not going to watch it.
Right. And I mean, you got to pay to make a movie.
Right. Exactly.
You got to keep the lights on.
yeah.
And so you got to play to the audience. But what Brett brought to that movie was an awakening. The way you wrote it and directed it brought, I think, a bigger awakening on how you did it, because it's to where people want to watch it. It's not just poor humbug. I mean, you can go and talk to somebody about stage 4 cancer and try to make a movie about stage 4. People ain't going to want to sit there and watch it all. I watched my mom die of cancer. I held her in her arms while she passed. No one wants to see that. But if you did the life story of my mother, well, maybe they'd want to watch it. And that's where I think you hit a home run with it.
Well, it's interesting too, and I'll go back to the MMA side. Some of my really close friends fought in the UFC, still currently fight. And one of them, I won't mention name, I took him to the Cleveland Clinic. I was so concerned last year. Like, we need to go to a Cleveland Clinic. So we go in, and then I see it was one of the boxers that fought Muhammad Ali. Again, I don't want to say his name. And they're just in bad shape. And my buddy's not even that old. And the thing
Got to be Ray Lewis.
He was seeing like white things just floating around, floaters. And
What did they call that?
Well, they could be floaters. They could be visual scotomas with migraines.
Because I get them with headaches where I see the...
yeah, and one of the things with him is they're like, well, they did all the skill tests, and he still can do it. But it's like, hey, there's nothing really that we found something there, but there's nothing we can do. So at this stage, it's like you can keep on fighting, or you can choose not to fight. But that's kind of one of those things. You're a prize fighter, and I think about. I mean, I like the old school stuff. I like go back to the bronze bomber, right? Not the brown bomber, Joe Louis. And then I go back to the old days of Sugar Ray Robinson and Sonny Liston, and you see after their prize fighting years, something happens. Like Sugar Ray Robinson was known for beating his significant others. We don't know how Sonny Liston allegedly died. They have a downfall. Rocky Marciano, like why is that in combat sports? But you see NBA players, former MLB players, they're fine until old age. But it's those athletes that took a beating, that something happens to them, and then all the light. Basically, I see the analogy: you're in this bright light, the stadium, like the Gladiator, like you were saying, Paul. And once those lights go out and the fans stop cheering, there's this lull, and you're done fighting. What do you do after that? You have this high, and now you're not training. Now you're just stuck here with this damaged brain that's trying to figure out what should I do.
And we talked about that with the dopamine spikes on that adrenaline rush was the word I was looking for. God, it took me all this time. And the dopamine spikes that, us as competitors, you were a fighter. Did you play any sports?
I played hockey, but only at like a peewee level.
Mm-hmm. But you get these dopamine spikes and it raises that level, and every time you do it, it raises it more. So when you stop, your levels clear up here and you're done. There's I was depressed when I quit because I couldn't figure it out. And my wife actually said I was getting angry when I retired. My wife said I was getting angry, and we went and watched race. My wife took me for my birthday to watch dirt racing. And I looked at the wife and said, man, I think I want to try that.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a Ford Pinto. Went out and done it. 45 miles an hour, I was bored. I didn't take the next step to street stock and power and all that. I went right to modified. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it at 100 miles an hour, 105, 6 inches away, sliding. And I done that for 3 years, and I even got 2 concussions doing that. But because I needed that spike.
I was talking to a psychiatrist who's worked with hundreds of athletes, and exactly that. He said we were talking about SSRI drugs, and he said the problem with those is they flatline you, and as competitive athletes, you want to get you get to that point, and you raise the bar. Well, he said when the SSRI drugs flatline you, you do crazier things to get above that bar and feel alive, I guess. But I was reading in one of the bios one of the many bios that I saw online about you, and it said that you were you had a great entertainment career. I was thinking about that. I was like, you know what? Entertainment was Star Wars and Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia and stuff. But and I was like, no, he is a storyteller, you say it very well that what you brought to the screen is very impactful. And yes, we bought into the story. It was a heartfelt story, and then you really sent it home.
And I would just add to that, like we're not just doing the trilogy, but there's something off the camera that we talked about, the stunt world. But then, like, I'm directing a true crime series, and I do scripted, but the true crime series, and I don't know why this is messing me up, because the parents are in prison, adopted parents, but the 2 toddlers went missing from California City. They were never found again. The parents are in prison right now, but there was no blood, no forensic evidence. They went off the testimony of an 8-year-old. And I've been doing interviews from the chief of police, the lead investigator, to the YouTubers. And what's interesting about my brain, and I don't bring this up for the story, I think about myself because I can't find the boys. There's no bodies. It was the second no body case in Kern County, California history. I'm like, is this my brain going haywire? Because I'm like, where are they? And as we make this film, it's going to be a 3-part documentary series. I know people love true crime. I'm just confused. Like, I will never know how it is. I mean, one of the people that talked to me today, and he reached out to me recently, he's related to the father that's in prison, made a statement, which I won't repeat, but it's just like some of these things, like, I start to internalize and take on. Like, I have a vested interest in finding these boys, and we may never find them. So do you think, I guess this is a question for the doctor, is this just my storytelling brain going kerploop, or is that a byproduct of potentially the CTE?
Yeah, that's a good question. We might not really be able to make that distinction, but I think, having that damage definitely predisposes you to having some difficulty making those connections. And I think then in the setting of making the movie, and now it all comes to the front lines.
And those highs and lows, I mean, that's a real thing in my life. But you know, I don't want to take away from the sports and fighting. By the way, I don't think is a sport. You don't play boxing, you don't play MMA. You fight,
Yeah.
right? But Muhammad Ali did say this. He said that you can get in your car right now, drive down the street, and die, and never achieve something that you wanted to achieve. Like race car drivers potentially can die. You have other things. He's like, what we do, he was talking about him and Joe Frazier at the time, is dangerous, but we could die doing something else. I mean, those guys gave each other brain damage. But then at the other side of it is awareness. Okay, if you're aware of that, but one of his quotes was like, if I was to tell a young black boy, should he box? No, go get an education, get a degree. Don't do this because there's only a few people in the world that can do this. And so it's a powerful statement, which we're going to use in Combat the American Dream. But he realized that there was something going on, and that was in the late 60s, 70s. So no one really talked about it, but that's something that he brought up is, what, do you want to live a regular life and not know what you could become, or are you going to take a chance? And I think it's just, if you're aware of what you're doing, then go at it. Because if I knew that I would be dealing with this after playing football, would I have still played? I don't know. Maybe not. But then it's helped me in a lot of ways of discipline and perseverance and grit.
I would have still rodeoed.
I think, well, knowing, the more I know and the more I'm learning, I definitely would have played flag football as long as I could have.
But you didn't start football until you were in high school.
Okay, but
and that just goes proof right there from what I'm saying is you don't need to play at a young age. Athletes, no matter how good they are, athletes will always shine.
What did you ask me?
Would you still play?
Knowing what I know now about repeated head impacts, and I'm going to get thousands of repeated head impacts, and there's a possibility I get CTE.
Yes,
I would think long and hard about that.
Not when you got drafted at $55,000 a year, but now minimum wage is $780,000 a year.
Okay. Well,
would you do it now?
There's difficult jobs. There's jobs that pay you a lot of money. Maybe, I don't know, but I don't. My brain is pretty. My mother wanted me to be a doctor, Corey. You know, that's out the window. But anyway, let me finish the entertainment thought. Entertainment is finite and it has an end. A story goes on forever. And the stories you're talking about, started in the we're talking about boxing and pugilism in the 1920s, and it right up on until you have you ever met Muhammad Ali?
No, I wish I did.
Yeah.
That was one. He was at my buddy, the fighter Kevin Casey, his wedding, and I was like, "Hey, can I get the invite?" He's like, "No, we're at a chair." So
I met Mike Tyson.
Did you really?
Yeah, in Las Vegas.
Well, you've met a lot of people. He was in the industry that you've been in for years, and he's been in Yellowstone and this and that, and
yeah. And I did stuff when I was rodeoing. I did commercials and stuff when I was rodeoing and younger, but I was never the face. I was the sidekick. But go on to your story.
Where was I? Well, I'm what I wanted to ask, and I know I'm hearing you did your thesis for your master's, but I'm hearing you're gunning for Dr. Kano, PhD, or what are you working on?
Right, it's educational doctorate, but I may switch it to a PhD. That's just more for me to get a terminal degree and say I've reached the highest in academia. But storytelling, I've always liked to storytell. I always could come up with something in my mind. I mean, I've written scripted films that are on Amazon. I won't tell them because I don't want anyone to look them up. But I still write scripted films. We're working on a scripted film pre-production on that because I like both the real unscripted, which is documentary style, and I do like writing it and coming up with a background and context. And really, I just wanted people to be impacted some way. I think that's the biggest thing. And if you can't be impacted by something, again, there's a ton of movies you can go see, and it's like I've seen this before, or why was the ending what the ending was, right? But I want people to think twice when they leave the theater or when they leave their home. Like, wait, I need to think. That made me think twice. Just like Concussed, because I look at it now and I tell people it's not that good. Meaning, I'm a much better filmmaker now. We have much better equipment. But they're like, no, it's pretty good. I'm like, no, I could go back. I would do things differently, but I know I just got to move forward. But yeah, storytelling, I want to tell people stories. I want people we were in Argentina, me and my wife on a vacation. And so we hired a private tour guide or driver / bodyguard. I was like, take me to the slums, which I should have went by myself and not taken I apologize to her about that. But these are bad worse than any worse place in America. And I took my phone. I didn't think I was going to film. I was filming there, and it was horrific. The things I saw, and so we'll probably put a 15-minute thing together. Nothing too big, but I wanted people to know the story of. We're calling it Slum Hope, like play on Slim Hope. Like, there's not a lot of hope there. We're in pre-production on a feature documentary on a former gang member from the Mexican mafia who's black that became Christian, and we're calling it Breaking Good. So again, I'm telling I want to tell people stories so that way they can make a connection to someone else. And that's what I like to do at the end of the day.
That's like the cross and the switchblade. You ever heard that?
I've never heard of that.
Well,
analogy.
it's the gang member gone good from New York City streets.
Okay.
In the probably 60s. Pretty powerful. So that's funny.
Welcome to the Head Rush Podcast, brought to you by the Patrick Risha CTE Awareness Foundation. Karen Siegel, thank you so much. Paul?
So go to stopcte.org, learn about their foundation, and they are sponsoring us for the next year. We are thrilled to have them team up with them and bring awareness to this disease.
So please go to their Facebook page, go to their website, check them out. Karen is very, very, very willing to work with you. Contact her, and if you do know her, thank her for us, or just go on their Facebook page and say thank you for sponsoring the Head Rush Podcast. You ask a question at the end of Concussed, the American Dream. If you had 2 minutes to share with Tyler, what would you say? My question is, you have 2 minutes. What would you share with parents about playing concussion sports?
My thing would just be aware of the dangers. I mean, that's the biggest thing is as long as you're aware of what's going on, what you're putting your child through, and what the repercussions are if they eventually do play. Because there's parents there that want them to play because they weren't that good or to play through themselves. I see those parents like,
living through the eyes.
Yeah, living through the children's like, just stop, let them play. And here's a good example. Christian Okoye was 22 when he started playing football. And in the film, he shows that this is what football did. They had to put like a metal rod in his neck. So
I played against him. He was hard. He was hard to take down.
Did you tackle him?
I might have bounced off him. I don't know. No, when you tackled him, it wasn't just you. It was 3 or 4 guys. So yeah, I've hit him. I've definitely hit him before, or gotten hit by him.
And I think us that suffer become great storytellers because of how our brain works. I really do, because I think that the thoughts in our head are going so fast and so much. And it's like I've told my wife and I've told my doctor and Paul and everybody, I'll get stuck on one subject and it'll stay there forever. And I can't get it out. And it just stupidest stuff. I mean, I make up stories. Just in my head, it's like, really? Where'd that come from?
This isn't stupid, but it's a thought that's locked in your brain.
Right.
Get TES billable.
Right.
We're coming down to the wire. Any questions for our guest, David Kano?
Well, they asked me a question, so now I'm going to put you guys on the spot. So you have 1 minute to tell your younger self anything. It doesn't just have to be about head trauma. You have 1 minute. What do you tell your younger self, and how old are you?
Well, I got on my first bareback at 14. I was raised in a cowboy mentality that no matter what, you get up and you grind. Be the first. Give it your all. Don't hesitate. And I believe that still today. What I would tell myself is be more aware of, like what we talked about. I had a concussion and the next day I rode. Why? Because it was, do I doctor out? Do I side out? Do I pay the penalties and then got to deal with all this? Or do I pay my entry fees, which is the cheapest way out? I'm already there. Pay my entry fees, get on, and hope for the best. I think if I could go back into my old self, say, pay more attention to your health, pay more attention to the impacts that you take, the lasting. You talk about a rod in your neck. I got a dead guy's bone in my neck. I got my back fused. I've had 6 shoulder surgeries. I've tore my body up.
So you tell your younger self to pay more attention.
Right. Be more aware of what the impacts, the lasting impacts. How about you?
The saying, don't sweat the small stuff. I would actually tell myself to sweat the small stuff and pay attention to detail, because not paying attention to detail or not following through has caused me some pain in my life. It caused others that know me personally probably a lot of pain, but or some pain. I think being diligent, working through situations, paying attention to details, doing what you need to do, doing your taxes before April 15th and whatever the date is. And, because if you don't, then they're a nagging, just something at the back of your mind every single day you wake up. Not just taxes, but
Everything.
How old would you be?
When I would start to saying that?
Yeah. No, well, yeah. How old would you tell that person, that young Paul?
I would actually start praying over that young self, like at birth, and then I would start speaking. I would start speaking words over that young self to that effect. And I used to tell my daughter, just a wonderful little girl at 13 years old, 14 years old, I said, Isabella, boys only have a couple things on their mind, and you need to, be aware, and so on and so forth. And I said, boys' brains do not mature until about 30 years old. And I said, girls mature about 24, 25 years old, their brain. And I said, just remember that, and the things that the boys will be thinking. She calls me. She's driving home from her freshman year at college. She went to Liberty University in Lynchburg. She's driving home, and she says, Dad, you remember you used to tell me that? She says, it is so true. Their brains are not developed whatsoever. So
that's a Christian college. My sister went there. My niece goes there right now. She's a freshman.
Yeah.
Well, Bella is in a mission. A matter of fact, she's been living in
Goleta, Santa Barbara.
Right. At a church.
It's called the Jesus Burger House. They cook about 300 cheeseburgers every Friday night for the University of Cal Santa Barbara kids coming out of the bars. And it's a different world there. You probably have seen a lot of it, in the LA or San Diego.
I've been to Santa Barbara, the downtown area.
Yeah. Well, it's a different world in college too, because she said on Friday nights and Saturday nights they hear or see 3 or 4 ambulances every Friday or Saturday night, and it's a tough deal. And then she was there for 2 years, and she's coming home. She's actually going to YWAM, Youth with a Mission, out in Kona.
Wow.
And then she's going to go to a Spanish-speaking country. She's 3 months out there for training, and then she goes to a Spanish-speaking country for 6 months. So yeah, good stuff.
And
So,
you look at it, and you're here, and you're a storyteller, and you're very involved in concussion. I'd love to see a movie about concussed the American sports and just have all sports included in one, telling stories. So, because then you look at people's lives, and I think that affects it so much. You look at Paul here. You know, I grew up in a broken home. My mom was an alcoholic, you know, different husbands. And I had to grow up a rough life that way, but I had a loving stepfather and a loving stepmother. And then you look at Paul, beautiful family, still married together, 90 some odd years old.
white picket fence.
But when he was NFL, he had a son with myotubular,
Myotubular myopathy.
and he used his connections with NFL and dove into building the Joshua Fraze Foundation that is now helping kids with this. That's a trauma while you're playing football, taking the trauma. And I think you add all that up, Doc, doesn't it? We've heard it before that a trauma does not have to be a bang in the head, that background trauma, something like losing a child or dealing with that, has almost the same effects as a concussion can.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we see people with a pre-existing history of anxiety, depression, headaches are at greater risk of having longer duration of symptoms after a head impact. And like I touched on before, a lot of things can kind of eat away at each other, snowball, and so you kind of have to control them early as best you can.
And how many years did it take you to build up the Joshua Fraze Foundation and start making headway that you and Allison fought for how long?
Joshua was 1 year old. He was born one of 55 known cases in the world, myotubular myopathy. Allison, she's from New York, and she's got a lot of chutzpah, and she basically told me, we're going to use your platform in the NFL to raise a bunch of money. We raised about $7 million over 12 years. We had a big event in Boston. And we actually started funding research at Harvard, and then down in Wake Forest, and it took us 96 to 2017. The first shot of gene transfer therapy was given to a child September 19th, 2017. And I have pictures of these kids 50% of them don't make it to 18 months of age. I have pictures of kids standing and walking that were in wheelchairs, and
Like your son.
yeah, like Joshua. Yeah. So it's been a journey. Everybody has their journey.
Right.
You know, everybody has their journey, and we were. You know, and you know what he actually told his mother one time? Don't sweat the small stuff.
And that's why I say I would tell myself at 14, because I think at 14 I would be mature enough to maybe listen. That, maybe understand what I'm telling myself. Because when I was riding before that, I was just doing it to do it. It was fun. Let's enjoy it. But I think at 14, and Brett's 17 for football, CLF is 14. But I look at it that at that age, am I right? And you're a neurologist, you'd be able to speak more on it. But at 14, I think you're almost mature enough to maybe accept that advice.
I wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. It's also hard to really get that world view at such a young age
Right.
to know, if I'm start playing football now and play for 30 years, how is that going to affect me? You're really more in the moment, and it's hard. You have to rely on others to help out, coaches, teammates.
And that's why I say at times I believe TES should be billable and a medical diagnosis, because then the therapies wrap around not only repeated head but also repeated blast exposure that can help bring more awareness to this. The more people you can get definite, I think it's very needs to be very proven to get that diagnosis, because there is no cure. But I think if you can bring that awareness up, and then at junior high school, when organizations really start coming into play, if you play a sport, you have to come in for a 1-day seminar. You and your
Your
parents
yeah.
have to come in on a seminar for RHIs and concussions and all of this, because it's like I said when we had ours, is dads live through their sons. I hate to say it, but a lot of dads sucked at sports. But boy, they want their son to be the best of the best, and they're willing to just create it. And maybe I'm saying it wrong, maybe it's the way I am, but I think the people that are smart about sports and have done it have a better understanding when they're trying to navigate their kids. They're not living through their, how do you say it, living through the eyes of their son or daughter.
Vicariously.
Yeah, living vicariously. But if you can get Mama Bear in that seminar,
I've seen a
Mama Bear's going to stand up and say, "You do what to my son? This can cause what?"
Well, down in Florida, there's a lot of mama bears that like the Gators in Florida State, and they would love their sons to play. We ask one last question of our guests. We always end our podcast by giving hope. Can you share something that would give our listeners hope?
Can I thank a couple people first?
Yeah,
that were part of the
absolutely.
film?
Yeah.
So Raymond J. Roman, you got
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a fact to him.
Shout out to Ray Roman.
Ray, you're awesome, dude.
Ray Zach Tataryn is another one that he was a producer that came on and part editor. So thanks to them. As far as what would give hope, I'm just going to say, based upon my faith and beliefs, like hope is in the Lord Jesus Christ. And as my personal Lord and Savior, I don't push my beliefs on anyone else. But to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for God, the God of the Bible. And
amen.
I'd be dead. I look back at my life where, why didn't I die then? Why didn't I die then? And so the hope would be that gives me purpose. Ecclesiastes is one of my favorite books in the Bible. King Solomon wrote it. And it's very depressing at first, which I like it. I like that depressing feeling. But at the end, he says, you know what? Life can be depressing because it's just the same thing. He's like, I've had it all. I've had riches. I've had women. I've had drink. I've had wine. But that meant nothing to me. It's like a chaff in the wind. He said, if you have God in your life, that's what gives you purpose. So that's the only true hope I can give any listeners.
Amen. Good. Thank you.
And
You got one more thing?
yeah, I'm on my phone here real quick. So, it's Romans 5:3-5. Believers can rejoice even in suffering because it leads to endurance. And then, which in turn builds character, which in turn brings hope. That is, Nick LeDuc sent me this. This hope will not disappoint because God's love has been poured into the hearts through the Holy Spirit. Nick LeDuc sent me this months ago, and this has become my favorite verse because of what I have to deal with on a daily basis. That, my suffering brings endurance. Endurance brings character. Character brings hope.
And if you piggyback to Romans 8:28, which says, "And we know that for those that love God, all things work for good for those who are called to Him according to His name." I paraphrase it, but all things work together for good for those who love Him.
Yes.
And it's not like just some things. It means the morbid things, the things that you do wrong, it's the things you do right. All things work together. It's hard to kind of digest that in our finite minds, but that doesn't mean it's any less true.
That's right.
Yeah, you're speaking to the choir. I'm a preacher's kid, so thank you,
Thank you
Dave.
so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kaser, again for joining us. And
Anything special you want to say?
You guys, thank you for having me on. I think you guys' stories, and what I'm hoping is that what you guys are doing will go to a bigger platform, so that way what's on TikTok and Twitter is just this old athletes talk of these war stories or things in the locker room. But these are important stories as well to be heard. And I think I'm really hopeful that you guys get a much bigger platform at some point, because people need to hear this.
well, thank you. We're gunning for it. Thank you. Go to YouTube, subscribe, share, all that stuff that the young people do nowadays.
We don't know it all, but please go do it.
Yeah. Thank you.
And the other thing I got to say is Ray Roman had us bring on James Kelly. Now we got you on. You know who we're gunning for next, right?
Number 4.
Yeah, he remembers my name.
Hey, I got a text back almost right away.
That's funny. That's good. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This podcast is for general information only and does not constitute the practice of medicine. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard and delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.